there wasn't a huge search like, how can I get the confidence for this? But for all of us, we might have some area in our lives where we do have that confidence or that spark. And for me, being able to find it in running also helps as a reminder that I can do other things in my life.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 155 of the Running for Real podcast. Welcome to the show. If this is your first time of listening, if you have listened to 155 episodes or 154, I suppose, welcome back. Thank you so much for being a loyal listener. Now, last week we had Shannon Osika, who recently ran a 4:01 1500 meters all by herself. And although it was about how fast Shannon is and how impressive she is, it was actually a conversation about a lot more than that, about this pressure that we place on ourselves, her struggle with handling changes that went on with her body during teenage years. And we also talk about balance. It was a really great conversation, and I hope you enjoyed that one. Now, this is New York City Marathon weekend. I am here in New York for the first time, very excited, have heard so much good, and I'll be reporting a lot on what I am seeing because I've always been curious as someone who's never been before. If you don't follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is at TinaMuir88. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/real Tina Muir. So go do that now if you don't already. I'll be sharing a lot about my experience this weekend, and I have a lot planned. And I have 2 live shows for you, which I'm recording this weekend, and they will be coming out on Monday and Tuesday. So if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, go do that, because then you can get them straight onto your phone or podcast player, however you listen. So Monday's episode is going to be with Angie Spencer from Marathon Training Academy, with Carrie Tollefson from the See Tolly Run podcast, and with Emily Abati, who is of the Hurdle podcast. So it's kind of another one of those podcasts like what we did in Boston, where it's kind of behind the mic. It is hosted again by Generation UCAN, and I'm really thankful for them for putting that together. So that episode will be coming out on Monday. On Tuesday, I will be putting out my episode with the New York Roadrunners, which I recorded with Dina Castor and Dr. Jonathan Fader at the New York Roadrunners Run Center. So be sure to go listen to those 2 this coming Monday and Tuesday. Now, today I wanted to bring it down a notch after a pretty intense weekend. Those of you who are here right now are probably needing to be brought back down to normality. If it is a tough weekend, some inspiration is needed to remind us of how strong we are if we've had, a bad day. And of course, if you aren't at the New York City Marathon, which most of you listening are probably not, how about some inspiration on what you can do? So I'm excited to bring to you Butler Glenesk, who is a software engineer and someone who is fighting hard and speaking her mind about issues that are really important to our world right now. Now that I'm saying that, I just want to warn you, towards the end of the episode, we do touch a little on some of those issues like immigration. And at this point in time, I want to give you a heads up. If you do not want to listen to that, you can leave at that point. I will give you a warning before we start talking about that. But wait, don't go yet. Even if you are uncomfortable with talking about that, you still need to hear Ali's story. She has a very humbling and brave story to share. One I think we can all learn a lot from, as the way we view failure, really, and just how much our bodies can do. Yes, everyday bodies, just like yours, you will hear. You don't have to have this super body. She doesn't claim to be anything but a middle or even back of the pack runner. This is the reason I wanted her on. I think many of you are going to resonate with Ali. So before we go meet her, I just want to thank UCAN and Body Health for sponsoring this episode. Let's go meet her. Thank you to Generation UCAN for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Honestly, friends, right now, my life is a little hectic. We are moving from Lexington to St. Louis. I just took a 3-week trip to England with Bailey. The New York City Marathon is here. So as you listen to this, I am probably already in New York. That means my nutrition has at times been a little lacking. There have been a lot of times where I don't know what I would have done without UCAN. And I'm not asking for sympathy in any way. I know everyone has a crazy busy life now, but I'm more saying that we all have these stressful times where life is just, this massive blur and whirlwind. You probably know by now that I use Generation UCAN for my fuel choice in races, the cranberry raspberry before the race, and I used the bars before the race, and then more cranberry raspberry in the longer races. I even carried it in my shorts in the Boston Marathon because I couldn't bear the idea of taking down gels. That's how much I trust UCAN to fuel me through my races, but UCAN isn't just for people training for goal races or doing big things. I find right now it is so helpful with life being all over the place. We all go through these phases where grabbing something on the go is all we can manage, and it's either that or it's not having anything. And for me, the Generation UCAN with protein has been ideal for taking with me. I can mix 2 scoops up in water, or I can have one of my favorite chocolate peanut butter UCAN bars and run out the door. At least then I know my body is being taken care of. I have some form of UCAN every single day, and I can't really imagine my life without it. You can add the powders to smoothies, to pancakes. There are all kinds of recipes out there if you want to get a little hit of that runner fuel into your everyday things. And you, my friend, can get 25% off at generationucan.com for using code TinaMuir25. Yes, that's 25% off. That's a massive discount. The website again is generationucan.com, and you can use code TinaMuir25 to go see for yourself. Ali, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running for Real podcast. You were hesitant to come on the show at first, thinking that, I don't know if it was maybe there were people that I should be interviewing in front of you, but I think my audience are going to love you, what you stand for, and just what you have done and this conversation we're going to have today. So thank you for being here today.
It's my pleasure, for sure.
Yeah, no, this is going to be interesting. And, I wanted an episode to kind of inspire my audience. And we might talk about some tough topics later, but for many listening, when they see these elite runners, these people who do these incredible feats, they see them as superheroes. And we hear things that people say, oh, I did this, let's say 30-day incredible feat. And, it just kept getting easier. Like at the beginning I struggled, but then I just kept going and it was fine. And it's really hard for most of us to wrap our brain around how that can happen. And the reason that I thought that you would be such a fantastic person to have on the show, not only because I really admire the way that you speak out about things that maybe others are thinking but not saying, but you also, what we're going to talk about today, your journey that you made, you kind of have proven a point that we don't all have to be superheroes, and we don't all even have to achieve these massive big goals to kind of be proud of ourselves and discover who we are. But we're going to talk about that in a second. I just want to start with, tell us about how running came into your life. Has it always been a part of it? When did you begin running?
So both my parents are athletes, so I kind of grew up around the culture of sport. Mm-hmm. And I actually did swimming for a lot of my childhood, but my high school did not have a swim team. So I joined cross country and track and really enjoyed the camaraderie. And I'm from a small town, so we were just like super old school about it. Running the vineyard, the down country road. So that's kind of when I got started.
Mm-hmm. And what age was that?
High school age. So maybe
right as a freshman?
Yeah, sophomore year.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Okay. And from there, did you have just kind of a growing relationship with running? Did you go through any periods where you were just like, I'm kind of done with this, or was it always a part of your life?
On and off, it was definitely part of my life. I think I really picked it up again consistently maybe like 5 years ago or so. I was working in a pretty intense job. I was working in trust and safety at YouTube, which is basically a role where you're responsible for making sure that content that comes online is appropriate for users and enforcing the community guidelines. So long story short, you're exposed to a lot of really graphic content, some of the worst of humanity.
So you're just pulling it down, basically. That was
or making the policies what should be allowed, what's not, and then removing things that are not allowed. So yeah, I definitely picked up running more consistently during that period, just I think as a coping mechanism and a nice routine. That was something, for myself.
Mm-hmm. And you have since moved on from YouTube. But, that is interesting that running became a stress relief during a time that you were, I guess it probably would play with your mind day to day because you're having to, create the guidelines, but also it must have been exhausting kind of feeling like day after day you had to keep waking up doing the same thing? Like maybe people who keep sharing the same things, I don't know, but it's interesting how people do end up using running as this kind of escape. And I'm glad you've got yourself in a position now that you don't have to use it for that reason, but you use it for other reasons. So let's start talking about the main thing that we want to talk about today, which is there was a documentary running across America. You had a plan to run 262 miles across California in 10 days, and you wanted to be the fastest runner to do it. So tell us about where did the idea come up for that, and what made you decide to want to do something different rather than I'm just going to run a marathon, or even I'm just going to run an ultra?
Yeah, I got to the point where I knew I was going to leave my job that I had been quite invested in. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next. So I knew I just needed to do something. And initially I thought I would run across Oregon. I had visited Oregon recently and was like, oh, it was really nice. But Oregon is like 500 miles long. It's pretty far. And the logistics were like, I don't know Oregon very well. So then I was like, I should do my home state. I would know like exactly the route. It'll be more straightforward. And the bonus was it was shorter. So to be clear, I was running like the short ways across California from Nevada to the ocean. So that was kind of the beginning. And,
when you came up with this idea, was it kind of, you said it was as you were getting ready to leave your position, was it kind of a taking on that escape route, like the stress relief, to a new level? Or what made you decide to want to do something that was completely out of the box?
I don't know. Part of me, I think, it was just something to do, a fun challenge. And it was like big enough that it was like something.
But what did you feel you would get out of the others? Did you have any kind of thing in mind? Like, if I can do this, I will feel like I'm good enough. If I can do this, I will feel like I am a badass. What did you have any expectations of what your life would look like after you completed this?
I don't know if I had expectations about afterwards, but there was a turning point when I like thought of the idea and like said it out loud to someone. And I realized that it was the first time in a long time that I was just really feeling excited and looking forward to something and really like standing in my own power, I guess. And then that was the point where I realized, okay, I have to do this.
Mm-hmm. And so how long in advance was this before you actually started it?
Oh gosh, maybe a month or...
Oh, wow. So really quick. Okay.
Yeah, it came together maybe a bit longer than that, but it wasn't too long for sure.
And why decide to do it that way rather than saying, I'm going to take a year to make sure that I can do this? What was it about kind of going straight into it and being like, I'm really going to see what I'm made of, that you went that route?
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't too much to plan in some senses. And I wanted it to be, right after I left my job and just be part of, I don't know, after you graduate high school, some people take a gap year. This was kind of like that. It was just, now I have the time. Let's do it. Okay.
And so what did training look like going into it with that 1 month? Did you do anything what was the longest run you did going into it?
I don't remember. I didn't have like really specific training for this, which is not to say that I wasn't, like in shape and prepared. Probably I had been running, 40 or 50 mile weeks pretty consistently with, longer runs sprinkled throughout. But it was definitely more like kind of running as a lifestyle at that point. And there was part of me that wasn't, sure I was prepared or could do it, but.
And was there the night before kind of panic of what am I doing? Why am I doing this?
Oh, certainly. I think I jump into a lot of things in life where you're like, why am I doing this? This is crazy.
Okay. So what did you tell yourself during that moment when you were thinking that? Like, how did you reassure yourself?
I don't know. I mean, the ball was just rolling. Something we haven't spoken about yet is that serendipitously, I had two friends who were excited about this idea and willing to join me and support me. So I think probably in those moments, like I wasn't going to let them down. And I was like, hey, we're doing this thing.
Yeah. So tell us about the two friends that you decided to have do it with you. Because one of them, I probably wouldn't be talking to you if it wasn't for her. And the other one has, some amazing things to her name of what she's been able to do. So tell us about the significance of having friends to be alongside you.
Yeah, I think having friends was the best part that, we were like 3 women who were just out on the road doing this thing. My friend, Noam, she was serendipitously at the time, I think, kind of like starting her career working with video and producing films. And she wanted to make a movie about our little adventure. So she was totally along for that. And like later, I think she became like a National Geographic explorer, but this was one of her first films. And then my friend Mariam, who I had been trail running with quite a lot and knew from back in the day from school, she serendipitously was studying to go to medical school. So she also, she was busy with that, had some time and was totally down. And so that was our motley crew.
Yeah, I love that. So let's go through some of the days. You started out deciding you were going to run a marathon a day, which kind of nicely adds up the distance. And tell us about kind of what was going through your mind or what your body was feeling like during, let's just do each day at a time. So starting with day 1 and then go on to day 2 and 3.
The first day we started at the Nevada-California border on the north shore of Lake Tahoe, and no one ran with me that day. I remember feeling like that's a scary moment because you're like, oh gosh, there's so far to go. And I felt like pretty terrible, but Noam and I started just like chatting, and Mariam met us with some snacks, and just kind of the miles clicked by.
Thank you to Body Health for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. You hear me talk about them every week, and that is because I really believe in what they do. What Body Health Perfect Amino does specifically. I took it while I was running 90 miles a week training for my peak races and elite, and I could feel a massive difference in recovery. I could tell when I skipped a few days. And if you're trying to recover from a race this fall and you just feel like your body cannot get back to normal, it feels sluggish, sore, just kind of blah after that race, this will help you get your body its life back. Even if you are like me and you're not racing that much, that doesn't mean Perfect Amino isn't going to help you. In fact, in some ways, that's actually the best time to take it. If you're pregnant, it's totally safe. If you're postpartum, it will speed that healing from the trauma that your body is working through, from giving birth to a child. And if you are injured, well, I don't need to remind you that it's going to help you there too. Perfect Amino contains the 8 essential amino acids the body needs to support and maintain its muscular, skeletal, enzymatic, and hormonal system. The essential amino acids in Perfect Amino are in the exact proportions needed for maximum utilization by the body. And I know I'm not the best at getting in enough protein for recovery. And if you aren't either, but you keep getting injured, this could be a massive help for you. You can find out more at tinamuir.com/aminos. That's TINAMUIR.com/AMINOS. You can get 10% off everything on the Body Health website. They have plenty on there using code TINA10. That's TINA 10, 110. Got a bit confused for a second there. Join the hundreds of others from our community who use Body Health Perfect Amino. If you don't love it, you can get your money back.
The first day we started at the Nevada-California border on the north shore of Lake Tahoe, and no one ran with me that day. I remember feeling like that's a scary moment because you're like, oh gosh, there's so far to go. And I felt like pretty terrible, but Noam and I started just like chatting, and Mariam met us with some snacks, and just kind of the miles clicked by.
And then what about day 2? Like you'd already run a marathon, and I'm taking it you've never run 2 marathons back to back before this.
No, I think the first day ended up being maybe 18 miles, so short of a marathon, but still, you're moving. The second day was really incredible in some ways because we started in Squaw Valley in the morning, like it was still dark, and Mariam was running with me that day. And it ended up being like the furthest Mariam had ever run in her life, just that day. And it was an epic sunrise, like going up the escarpment on the same exact route that you've seen like iconic runners in the Western States race. And so that was a really powerful day, I guess. And also long. I think it was the longest day, maybe 8 hours plus out in the high country. But we made it, and we found Noam, who had been doing this like off-road vehicle driving to try to find us in Robinson Flat. So it was fun.
Mm-hmm. And then what started to happen after there, leading up to, we'll go into day 5, 6, and 7. But what else happened between then?
I loved all the following days. They were the days where you started to be like, whoa, my body is awesome. Like the third day when you've already run a marathon plus the day before and you're just like, wow, I have legs. This is nuts. And then the 4th and 5th day, still like feeling pretty good that was cool.
Mm-hmm. And then what happened?
I think the 6th day was when, I don't know, my legs started to be having intense shooting pains. And it was like starting to feel not runnable by the end of the 6th day. So that was when I was like, oh, we'll see what's going to happen tomorrow. And then the 7th day, we walked a lot. It was quite hot. And by then we were around Fairfield in California. So, open fields, very hot weather. And at the end of that day, I couldn't get in the car because I couldn't bend my legs, which was crazy. But that was when I was kind of like, I think I'm done because I can't move my legs anymore.
And tell us about the decision there. How were you feeling mentally and emotionally knowing that, you'd set out to do this challenge and, in some ways so close, but yet so far? Someone could say, well, you've only got 3 days left, but what was going through your mind? Like, was it a hard decision, and how did you handle that emotionally?
I think it was a hard decision because we were a team and, it wasn't just me. I think me being in it, part of what I set out to do is kind of find a limit. I wouldn't say the limit because who knows, you can always go deeper perhaps. And I felt in some ways like I found it. My legs have never felt this way before. But I think for my friends, they were a little bit more like, what if we take a rest day and then go, start again? So that part was definitely a conversation.
Mm-hmm. And how did you handle it the coming days after that? Were you completely okay with your decision? Was there any part of you that thought, oh, I wish I had just tried and kept going? How did you handle that?
Oh, I handled it well. I felt like, well, I didn't have a choice. I couldn't move my legs was kind of my position. And I did feel validated because it wasn't like the next few days I was still, pretty tired and not very mobile. So I felt okay. But, as time passed, I definitely still wondered, like, could there have been more? Maybe. I don't know.
And is that where you're kind of sitting now?
I don't know. Now I think I'm grateful I stopped when I did, just because I'm running for life, and I was training for a marathon later that year. I didn't want to, push it to any injury type of situation. But there is some curiosity, of course, too, of like, did I really leave it all out there? So who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's going to be normal. I think we're never going to get to a place where we'll completely get rid of those what ifs. But So the reason I thought your story was so interesting and I wanted to kind of bring you in to talk about it. I mean, not only is it inspiring that you kind of went from, now I know, less than a month of training or month of preparation, I should say, for this race, and then going into doing 175 miles in 1 week, which is more than even as far as I know, the top elites would do. And so you being someone who, as you say yourself, is a middle of the packer. Firstly, I want to kind of talk about people listening who think they hear these feats people do. They hear these kind of big, wild dreams and they think, oh, that's just for people who have a talent, or that's just for people who are really tough. And I could never do something like that. But from what you've already shared with us, like you've always been kind of real with yourself, but you also appreciate that you haven't got a special talent or any kind of ability that would have kind of hinted in the past that you would be able to do something incredible like this. So what would you like to say to someone listening who've always kind of admired those people who do these big things, but thought, that's not me. I couldn't do that.
I think there's something to be said for consistency and just showing up day after day. I mean, in some ways, I'm not a rock star and I'm not the fastest, but I did, spend years showing up and running and putting in the miles that kind of led up to this. And then I think the only other thing it takes is really just going for it and saying like, hey, why not me?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And so for someone who is listening, who is thinking, okay, maybe that could be the case, but they just don't feel, I mean, you talked in the documentary that Noam made for us, I guess, for the world. You talked about how, there's this little voice in your head that tells you that you're not good enough, you're not wearing the right clothes. I think many people will be able to resonate with those thoughts. So tell us about, what gave you the confidence to step outside of this fear of not being enough and being able to challenge yourself and do something special?
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of my negative self-talk shows up, for example, in the workplace. But for me, like running had always been something that was for me. And I really treated it like that. I wasn't being hard on myself about what my body looked like or my times and really saw it as an escape to some degree. So I think for me, there wasn't a huge search, like, how can I get the confidence for this? But I think for all of us, we might have some area in our lives where we do have that confidence or that spark. And for me, being able to find it in running also helps as a reminder that I can do like other things in my life. So,
and have you applied that to like career and other parts of your life? Like, if I can do that, I can do this.
Yeah, I think so. So I guess I would encourage folks to, find those little nuggets of confidence wherever you have them and foster them and grow them into other areas.
Yeah. And on that note, you talked in the initial little video about, I think you said something about there's two categories. There's people who are professional athletes who kind of get paid to run fast, and there's like quote unquote professional athletes who are getting money for running, but not necessarily fast runners. And you fell in neither of them, is what you said. But I kind of feel like one of the reasons I thought this would be a great conversation is because you kind of are that proof that middle of the packers, even back of the packers, if they want to, be included in this, which I think they should, are kind of almost put down a lot by themselves, by each other. You all kind of feel like what you're doing is nothing special. It's, forgetting the fact that you're covering the same start and finish line as everyone else. You are still putting yourself out there, often usually with a full-time job, with a family, juggling tons of other things. And, so I wanted to celebrate you and everyone listening who falls into that category, because Ali, I mean, I don't know how much you know about me, but every time I meet someone and they realize that I used to be an elite athlete, they always quantify it with, well, I'm not fast. I'm just like, it's never, they always feel like they have to kind of tell me that they're not a good quote runner, which I don't agree with at all, because again, I've just said, I feel like we're crossing the same start line, same finish line. You're putting the training in, I'm putting the training in. So have you kind of come to realize that within yourself, that just because you're not at the front of the race, just because you're not winning awards, that doesn't mean that you can't kind of celebrate what you're doing and use running to kind of be a positive influence in your life? I just want to really get that point across to the listeners. And what is your take on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think I've struggled too much with it. I guess I think even if you're super fast, you're not always going to be first. So I guess you have to have many avenues of meaning for why you do what you do and enjoy the journey. And also the running community is really made up of and needs everyone to be there, especially folks of different backgrounds, different speeds. Like that's really what it's all about. So regardless, folks are bringing a lot of value to the running community, regardless of speed or experience. And yeah, hopefully getting a lot of value out of your own personal running journey as well.
Mile 20 mental training course, Win Your Own Race, is opening its doors on November 15th, and I could not be more excited. I am so proud of this course, and hearing the feedback from the beta group who took it early just warmed my soul. Friends, it has changed their lives, their entire outlook to running and life. This is where, if I was typing this, I'd probably show you that crying emoji, because that's how I feel, so overwhelmed with pride. So much love that they see how strong they are. They see that they deserve to be spoken to in a kind and loving way, and they are capable of doing anything they want to, and so are you. Yes, you, I mean it. You deserve the best. Mile 20 mental training course, Win Your Own Race, is a 12-week course that will take you through 16 mental training videos to build those courage muscles, help you see those strengths of yours, and learn how to work through those tough patches without mentally giving in. You have worked so damn hard for these goals year after year, and yet you tell me that your mind is always what lets you down on race day. You mentally quit. So stop letting it be your weakness. This course I created because you asked for it. It will help you get through that and get to race day feeling confident, able to fight those tough moments to get back to the good ones. The only way of guaranteeing your spot is to sign up at tinamuir.com/mental training. There are only limited spaces available, and friend, we are already closing in on that number and the doors haven't even opened yet. I will give you a huge discount on that first opening weekend, as in you will get $100 off the price if you sign up between November 15th and November 17th. By signing up, I will let you know that the doors are open and you can go get it. And even if your race is not for months, you can save the course until whenever you are 12 weeks out from your race, although there is actually an option for 9, 10, or 11 weeks if you prefer. You'll have 24 action sheets to fill out to make sure you actually do the work to build that mental capacity, as opposed to doing what we usually do, where it's listening and thinking, that's cool, I'll have to try that, and then never doing it. Don't worry, I am just as guilty of doing that too. You'll have an accountability class of other runners going through the course at the same time to hold you accountable, and I will be sending you emails checking in weekly to make sure you are staying on track. Go to tinamuir.com/mental training to reserve your spot. Once the doors close, they will not open again till May 2020. So again, go to tinamuir.com/mental training to guarantee your spot.
Even if you're super fast, you're not always going to be first. So I guess you have to have many avenues of meaning for why you do what you do and enjoy the journey. And also the running community is really made up of and needs everyone to be there, especially folks of different backgrounds, different speeds. Like that's really what it's all about. So I think regardless, folks are bringing a lot of value to the running community, regardless of speed or experience. And yeah, hopefully getting a lot of value out of your own personal running journey as well.
And another thing I think might hold people back from doing something like what you did is the idea of not completing it, of failing. There's a lot of negativity around failure in the running world. A lot of my listeners, let's say they did try something like you did, would really struggle with the fact that they didn't meet their goal. They didn't run the entire way. They didn't finish it. What would be your advice to someone who really does avoid things because of that fear of failure, or because they don't know how they would handle it if they weren't to accomplish what they set out to do?
I mean, I always think, what's the worst that can happen? Another anecdote from my run across California is that, I mean, I failed, but it was still the best part of my year. And I mean, I got married that year. So
does he know that you say that?
Yeah. But my aunt once gave me this Post-it for Christmas that said, "What the can happen?" Kind of like, what's the worst thing, as kind of this motivational thing. And I think oftentimes, like, I don't know, failure's a good thing. And there's so many nuggets along the way. So ask yourself, what do you have to lose, man?
But what about when you're in the like throes of that, like of right in there, and you've just maybe failed, and you've in your mind, you know that maybe you're going to learn lessons down the road, but you can't see the other side. You can't see yourself getting out of it. Do you have any advice there?
I mean, when you're just caught in what you feel is a downward spiraling pit of failure.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have a reason why you're there. You know, there's some points in like a training cycle, for example, where folks maybe that's a signal that you do need to like step back and have some good sleep or good food or rest. But other times it's just part of it. And, you know, you're still being there, building community or running with your friends or enjoying the outdoors. And there's other nuggets that I think are worth showing up for.
Okay. All right. So switching topics a little bit here. I read, I can't remember where I saw it from you, but you talked about how many of us feel lonely despite being surrounded by people. But you don't feel alone on the trails. Firstly, I want to kind of approach that part. Like, why is that the case?
I think that in some ways running can be a bit of a meditation, or it's just, you know, it's something to do. And there were definitely times years ago where I didn't have too many friends and was like, what am I going to do this weekend? And it was really nice to have running there as something to, like, you know, get out of the house and give yourself a little kick in the butt in some ways.
Yeah. Okay. And what about the fact that we do feel lonely? As you are someone who kind of speaks their mind, and you've kind of done a lot of growing and thinking yourselves, how can that be that we do feel lonely despite, you know, we're constantly in communication with people, we're constantly around other people? Why is that, in your opinion?
That's a good question. I think thinking about what it takes to feel a sense of belonging is, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. I guess for me, sometimes maybe you just feel like you're the black sheep, or you're the one who's just like not vibing with the group or something. But I think maybe some of those feelings just develop like over time, I guess. I don't think I have all the answers on that one.
Okay, well, I want to ask you about something to hear your thoughts on this. So I don't know if you know this, but apparently Instagram is thinking about removing likes on their pictures, which surely Facebook would follow along too. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a good idea? Like, what have you seen of how social media helps us feel lonely or, you know, feel good about ourselves?
I think it's a great idea. I think there's something to be said for platforms where you can explore your own like self-expression and identity and sharing for its own sake without feeling this need for external validation, I guess. So I like that idea. And I suppose that means we should all ask ourselves maybe why we let those things affect us so much.
So why do you think you let it affect you? Or does it affect you?
Oh, totally. If I post a picture, I'm like, why didn't anyone like it yet? But I don't know how much it goes beyond that.
I think we're all guilty of that.
Yeah. it's nice to be validated.
Yeah, I think that's something that's kind of within us, but we've just taken it to a new extreme within social media. All right. So I just want to say to any listeners who may be sensitive to kind of different topics outside of running, a few months ago, I suppose, had Lauren Fleshman on the show. We talked about some like deeper topics, and we're just going to go into those just a little bit now with Ali. But for those of you listening who aren't interested in those topics, this is your warning you can leave the episode now, and I'll see you next Friday. But you're passionate about many of the same topics that Lauren Fleshman talks about. And, you have been someone who has been trying to make a change, has been trying to help continue to grow and learn about the way that you're looking at the world. As this episode with Lauren Fleshman was so eye-opening, I thought it would be good to kind of dig in a little bit deeper with you as well. And so tell us a bit about the growing that you have been doing yourself in recent years, about kind of opening your eyes up to things you didn't see before.
Yeah, I guess for me on social justice issues and political issues, I think it's always worth remembering that for a lot of people, it's very personal, and your own livelihood or the livelihood of your loved ones is at stake. And so I think for anyone who isn't, living in fear every day, then that's a position of immense privilege, to be able to step away. So for me, I do try, if there's, areas in the news or in our country that I don't have a sense of personal fear, I do try to do some reading and really educate myself for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you've said that you do reading. You said that you're trying to learn all the time. And I read on your Instagram a message you had talking about how, you're constantly surprised and shocked by things that you see, primarily like the racism and structural inequality. But then you feel often like, why do I matter? What is the point of me even trying? We're doomed anyway. So, that's something that I think many of us kind of feel like we want to help, we want to do something, we want to be better, but it feels so overwhelming, like you won't make a difference. Like, talk to us about kind of what was going on there in your mind, and what is the thing you try and tell yourself when you go to that point?
Yeah, I think it's really hard because there definitely is this sense that so many of the challenges we're facing are insurmountable, whether it's, a loved one who is like caught up forever and seemingly forever in an unjust immigration system that's trying to steal your humanity at every turn, or just some, endless news cycle about some of the other atrocities that are going on. And that can be quite demoralizing. I think on the other side, for me, like social change takes everyone, it takes people who are willing to, be on the street protesting. It takes people to do heads down research on following the money. And it takes people in positions of power to show up and speak up and do the right thing. So I try to remind myself of that. And also the little victories, I think, holding on to them and remembering that they do really matter.
Mm-hmm. So for someone listening who maybe has a topic in particular they are kind of passionate about but haven't been able to do anything about it, to participate, what would you say to do as an everyday person? What should they go do?
One, I think read. I did a full year of reading racial justice books, and I think that really expanded my knowledge. And the really positive part of that was I was able to recommend books to family members who I think it really also changed their perspective, which was a huge win for me. Secondly, I think keep an eye out for little ways that you can do things, whether it's being a good friend or signing up to make a $2 monthly donation or showing up to a protest. I think there's lots of little ways to educate yourself and also take a stand for social change.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to add in there, I mentioned this to you before we started recording, that there's a documentary on Netflix right now called Hello Privilege, It's Me, Chelsea, something like that, with Chelsea Handler. And I would definitely recommend everyone take a listen to that if you want to kind of learn more about this. And I would say just in general, most people would do well watching that documentary, and it is done very well. So it is interesting to watch and interesting to learn, and kind of really makes you think about things. So I'm going to add that in there. All right. So Ali, we're just going to ask you the 4 questions I always ask at the end of episodes, starting with one piece of advice you'd like to give my listeners for life in general.
I'm going to go with my high school yearbook quote, which was, go do something crazy.
Which you did. And hopefully after listening to this episode, many of the listeners will go find something, their own version of that. All right. One person to follow on social media and why?
That's a hard one. I think I will go with Erica Baker on Twitter. Her handle is Erica Joy. She's someone who works in tech, who I admire for always speaking up about issues that are impacting the community, and also being a technical leader who I admire. I saw her speak last year, and she gave a talk about changing the world and how sometimes we forget to change the world for the better. And I've really kept that in mind since.
I love that. Okay, great advice. All right. And how do you want to be remembered on this show? What do you want to be remembered for?
That's a hard one.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I just hope to be remembered at all, and for everyone for listening.
Well, thank you. All right. And finally, a running for real moment, something that only runners will understand.
Oh, gosh. Well, for my first 50K race, I dreamed of it and trained for it for quite some time, and ended up, it basically started barfing within the first 5 miles.
Oh, dear.
And it was 90 plus degrees Fahrenheit. And I ended up dead last in the race after puking for maybe 6 hours. And that's when I finally dropped. But the fun kind of ending to that story is that I came back and ran the same race the following year and finished. And that was really awesome. So
yeah. That's good. Good for you for going back there and proving to yourself that you can. Thank you for sharing that. That's good. That's a good one it's definitely a running for a moment. All right, Ali, where can people find more about you and follow you in the future?
Ali Glenesk is my handle on Twitter and Instagram.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to say, I meant to mention it in the show that so National Geographic picked up the documentary about you, shared it. It was on Outside Online. I will have a link in the show notes for everyone to go watch the video. But yeah, Ali, thank you so much for your time and just for sharing with us. I really appreciate all that you've done, and hope you have inspired some people listening to go do something crazy for themselves.
Thank you.
My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. Well, what did you think? Do you now see that you too can do something extraordinary? And even if you don't make it, you'll be okay. It's the seeing where the edge of your limit is. That's the magic here. And I hope you will take this episode and think about what you can set your sights on and have something big in mind that you would just love to go for. I really would love to hear it. So let me know if you do think of something. Just another quick thanks to UCAN and Body Health for sponsoring this episode. And me. You can get yourself 25% off at generationucan.com using code TinaMuir25, and you can get 10% off the entire Body Health site. But the product I love is Perfect Amino, which you probably know by now. That helps with recovery by visiting tinamuir.com/aminos. That's TINAMUIR.com/aminos. Oh, and my mental training course comes out in 2 weeks. Be sure to grab your spot on the wait list so I can let you know when it is out in the world. There are so many people on that list. I actually only have limited spaces left. So go sign up at tinamuir.com/mental training. That's all one word. tinamuir.com/mental training. Even if your race isn't for a while, the doors will only be open for 2 weeks and then they will close until May 2020. You don't have to start the course right away. You can choose when you start, but you will have to purchase it when it opens. And this 12-week course can start for you anytime before May 2020. Oh, actually, it can start anytime you want to, but I would recommend purchasing it this time around if you want to use it before May 2020. All links that we talked about today can be found in the show notes at tinamuir.com/episode 155. And as I told you, next week we have 2 live shows, one on Monday and one on Tuesday from my live shows in New York. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And on Friday, we will have Jeff Warren, co-author of Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics, who's going to teach us how to meditate. And yes, for real, so we actually can do it. And he even gives us a meditation in the episodes. Pretty cool. I can't wait to hear what you think. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.